They say the hardest part of love isn't falling. It's staying. It's waking up on an ordinary Wednesday morning. No music playing. No grand romantic gesture waiting on the nightstand. Just the sound of two babies crying in the next room. A sink full of dishes. And a person lying beside you who you're still learning how to trust. And that is where love lives. Not in the highlight reel, but in the behind-the-scenes footage that nobody sees. Soren and Elara got their yes. They got their beach proposal, and their small ceremony, and their Tuesday evenings, and the family they never planned for. They got the version of each other that had been forged in fire, raw, honest, rebuilt on actions instead of promises. But here's the thing. Nobody tells you about second chances. They come with a price. And 6 months into their reconciliation, the bill arrived. Welcome back to Love Stories with Mr. Tyrell, where we don't do surface-level romance. We go deep. We go into the places love actually lives, in the arguments at midnight, in the silences that have weight, in the moments where everything you built together feels like it could shatter if you breathe too hard. If you watched part 1, you already know this story has teeth. You know about the delivery room. You know about the birthmark. You know about 10 months of silence and everything it cost them. And if you haven't watched part 1, stop right now, go watch it, then come back. Because what I'm about to tell you will not make sense without it. And before we go any further, subscribe. Right now. Hit that button, because this is the kind of story you need to be here for from beginning to end. Not halfway through. Not from a comment section summary. The whole thing. Every piece of it matters. Are you still with me? Good. Because Soren and Elara's story just got a whole lot more complicated. Let's go back to Maine. Portland. Maine in late spring smells like salt water and second chances. Soren had taken the position at the emergency department 6 months ago, and the rhythms of his new life had settled into something that surprised him daily, not because it was easy, but because it was his. Chosen, deliberate, built with both hands. He and Elara had found a house together 3 weeks after the proposal. Nothing dramatic. A 3-bedroom craftsman with a porch that groaned in the wind and a backyard big enough for the boys to eventually run in. Briar and Caleb were 8 months old now. They had Elara's eyes and Soren's stubbornness, and they had already mastered the art of dividing and conquering their parents at 2 in the morning. The mornings were Soren's favorite part of the day. Before the hospital. Before Elara's client calls. Before the world demanded anything from either of them. He would bring coffee to where she sat cross-legged on the living room floor, a twin on each knee, her hair still loose, her face still soft from sleep. She would look up at him with an expression that was not quite a smile but was better than one, something quieter, something that said, "You're here, and I'm glad, and I still can't believe this is real," all in the same look. He lived for that look. Their commitment, for them, was not the destination at the end of the love story. It was the beginning of the real one. And the real one had texture. It had weight. It had a woman named Claudia Voss. She appeared on a Tuesday. Soren came home from a long shift to find Elara standing at the kitchen counter, her phone face down in front of her, her back to the door. Something in the line of her shoulders stopped him. "Hey," he said. "Long day? Who's Claudia?" she asked. Not loudly, not accusingly, just quietly, the way people ask questions when they've already braced for the answer. The name hit him like cold water. Claudia Voss, his colleague from Chicago. They had overlapped for 14 months at the hospital there. worked the same brutal rotation schedule, survived the same relentless attending physicians, eaten bad vending machine sandwiches at 2 a.m. more times than he could count. She had been, in the way that people become necessary when life is relentlessly hard, a close friend. Maybe the closest he'd had during his time in Chicago. He had not told Elara about her. Not specifically. Not in the way that would have required explaining what Claudia had been, and what she had almost become, and why he had ultimately understood that what he felt for her was a pale, convenient substitute for what he'd been trying not to feel for Elara. "She's a colleague," he said, "from Chicago." Elara turned around. Her face was composed, but her eyes were doing the thing he had learned to watch for, the carefully controlled shuttering that meant she was pulling back, pulling inward, deciding how much of herself to protect. "She messaged you," Elara said. "Your phone was on the counter. I didn't read it. I just saw her name come up. She said she was going to be in Portland next week, that she wanted to see you, that she missed." She stopped. I put the phone down. Soren set his bag down slowly. "Elara, I'm not accusing you of anything. I'm asking you to tell me who she is." He told her. All of it. The late-night shifts. The friendship that had started to blur at the edges somewhere around month 10. The dinner that had felt like it was tilting in a direction he hadn't fully stopped. The fact that he had ended it, not dramatically, but clearly when he'd accepted the position in Maine. That he hadn't told Elara, because he hadn't thought it was relevant. Because in his mind, it had never become anything. When he finished, the kitchen was quiet except for the sound of Briar talking to himself on the monitor. "Did you have feelings for her?" Elara asked. He paused. 1 second too long. "I don't know," he said, because he was committed to honesty above comfort. "At the time, I thought maybe. Looking back, I think I was lonely. I think she was safe. I think I was using something manageable as a stand-in for something that scared me. But nothing happened, Elara. I need you to believe that." She was quiet for a long time. "I believe you," she said finally. "But I need you to hear me when I tell you that this isn't just about what happened or didn't happen. This is about the fact that you had an entire chapter of your life that I didn't know about, that you decided again what was relevant for me to know." The word "again" landed exactly where she meant it to. "You're right," he said. "I'm sorry." "I know," she said. "But sorry doesn't make me feel less like the only one who keeps having to rebuild from scratch while you keep deciding what version of yourself to show me." She walked to the bedroom and closed the door softly. Not a slam. Soft. Which was, somehow, worse. That night, Soren sat on the porch for 2 hours. He thought about the way fear works, how it wears different costumes depending on the season. In Chicago, it had worn the costume of ambition. Here, in Maine, in this marriage, it wore the costume of protection. He had told himself he hadn't mentioned Claudia because it wasn't relevant. But he understood, sitting in the dark with the smell of the ocean in the air, that what he'd actually done was make a unilateral decision about what Elara needed to know. The same thing she had done with the twins. The same wound. Different hands. He knocked on the bedroom door at midnight. "I'm not asleep," she said. He sat on the edge of the bed in the dark. "I did the same thing you did," he said. "I decided what you needed to know, and I filed the rest away and told myself it was for a good reason. And you were right, it's a pattern, and I don't want to keep repeating it." Elara was quiet. "I'm scared," he admitted. "Every time I think I have this figured out, how to be the right kind of partner, the right kind of father, the right kind of man, I find another version of myself that I'm not proud of. Another place where I chose comfort over honesty." She reached for his hand in the dark. "I'm scared too," she said. I'm scared that we'll keep doing this, keep finding new ways to protect ourselves from each other, keep having to rebuild, and at some point I'm scared there won't be enough left to rebuild with. There will always be enough, he said. You don't know that. No, but I'm choosing to believe it. Every day. That's what you taught me, that you choose it. You don't just feel it. She didn't respond, but she didn't let go of his hand either. They stayed like that for a long time, not fixed, not resolved, but present, which was, they had learned, the most important thing either of them could offer. She arrived on a Thursday, which was, in Soren and Elara's household, the day Elara had her longest client call, and Soren picked the boys up from the childminder alone. He had not arranged to meet Claudia. He had texted her that his life had changed significantly, that he was married with twins, and that while he wished her well, he didn't think a visit served anyone. She had responded with 3 words, I understand. Congratulations. That should have been the end of it. It wasn't. He saw her by accident outside the pharmacy on Congress Street, Briar in the carrier against his chest, Caleb in the stroller, a bag of diapers under one arm. She was standing at the corner looking at her phone, and for a moment, one moment, neither of them moved. She was exactly as he remembered. Composed, professional, the kind of beautiful that doesn't ask for anything. She looked at the twins, and something crossed her face that was not quite pain but was adjacent to it. Hi, she said. Hi, he said. They stood there on the pavement with the weight of everything that hadn't happened between them, and Soren understood in that moment what Elara had felt 10 months ago, standing in a delivery room looking at the man she'd never stopped loving. The terror of a collision between the life you built and the life you left behind. They're beautiful, Claudia said, nodding at the boys. Thank you. Are you happy? The question was not loaded. She was not a villain in this story. She was a woman who had cared about someone and who deserved a straight answer. Yes, he said, genuinely, for the first time in a long time. She smiled, and it reached her eyes. Good. That's actually all I wanted to know. She walked away. He stood on the corner until the stroller wheel started to roll, and Caleb reminded him, loudly, that they were supposed to be moving. He called Elara before he even got to the car. She was on Congress Street, he said. I ran into her by accident. I need you to hear it from me. There was a pause on the line. What happened? Elara asked. We said hello. I told her I was happy. She left. That's all of it. Another pause. Longer. Okay, she said. Okay? That's it. You called me immediately. You didn't have to. He could hear her exhale. That's what trust looks like, Soren. That's what you promised me. So, okay. But here is what nobody tells you about trust. Earning it back is not a single moment. It is not the phone call on Congress Street, or the midnight conversation, or the hand held in the dark. It is 1,000 small moments, strung together across time, and they are all equally fragile. And when the world decides to press on the old wounds, not with malice, just with the ordinary brutal randomness of life, the cracks find the places where the scar tissue is thinnest. For Soren and Elara, that moment came 6 weeks later. It started with a letter. It came for Soren, addressed to the hospital and forwarded to the house, from a hospital development board in Boston. A prestigious program, clinical leadership, research funding, a position that would have been 2 years ago the exact thing he'd built his entire career trajectory toward. The kind of letter a younger version of Soren Hale would have called the achievement of everything. He left it on the kitchen counter. Elara found it first. She read it once, set it down, picked it up again. Read the line that said relocation to the Boston campus would be required within 60 days, and she put it face down on the counter, the way she'd put her phone down the day Claudia's name appeared. When Soren came home, she was feeding the boys. "There's a letter for you," she said, her voice perfectly even. He crossed to the counter. "Read it. Set it down." "I wasn't going to tell you about it because I'm not taking it," he said. "You weren't going to tell me." Her voice was still even, which meant it was very dangerous. "Elara." "No." She put Caleb down, and when she turned around her eyes were bright with something that was not quite tears, but was the thing that comes before them. "How many times are we going to do this? How many times are you going to decide alone, in that head of yours, what I need to know? What's relevant?" "I made a decision." "It's not your decision to make alone. That's the whole point." Her voice broke, just slightly, at the edges. "We are supposed to be building this together. That means I get to know when the world is offering you something, even if you're going to say no, especially then. Because I need to know that you're choosing us, Soren, not just staying because there's nothing better on the table. I need to see you pick us." The silence after that was different from the others. It had a specific texture, the kind that comes when someone has finally said the truest thing, the thing that had been living underneath all the other arguments. She needed to see him choose, not just once, on a beach in Maine. Every time, repeatedly, visibly. He crossed the kitchen. He took her face in his hands, and she let him, just barely, her jaw tense, her eyes guarded. "Before I tell you what he said, and I need you to hear what he said, because it's the most important thing in this entire story, I need you to do something. Right now, hit that like button. And if you haven't subscribed yet, do it. Because what comes next is going to change how you think about what it means to actually choose someone. And you want to be here for the rest of this. Don't let the algorithm bury this story before you get to the end." "Okay." Back to Soren. He held her face, and he said, "Read the letter again." She frowned. "What?" "Read the last paragraph. The one at the bottom." She reached for it, without breaking eye contact. "Read. We were made aware of your decision to relocate to Portland by a mutual colleague, and wanted to reach out regarding the possibility of developing a satellite clinical training program in southern Maine. If this interests you, we would welcome a conversation at your convenience." She read it twice. "It's not a relocation offer," he said quietly. "It's an invitation to build something here. I was going to tell you tonight. I was waiting until the boys were down because I wanted your full attention when I showed you. I wasn't hiding it." He paused. "I know how it looked. I know my track record on this. But I need you to know. I am learning. I am trying." "Elara, put the letter down." She looked at him for a long time with those eyes that had always seen through every version of Steady he put on. And then something in her face shifted. Not dramatically, not the way things shift in movies. Quietly, like a door opening in a room that had been locked for a long time. "I know you're trying," she said finally. "Is that enough?" he asked. "Right now? Yes. Right now, it's enough." She stepped into him. Not a dramatic collapse, just a lean, her forehead against his chest, his arms coming around her, both of them standing in their kitchen with two babies watching from the floor, and a letter on the counter that had almost broken everything, and instead had shown them both exactly where the work still needed to happen. This, Soren thought, was what love actually felt like. Not the beach proposal, not the ceremony. This negotiated, hard-won, imperfect, standing in the kitchen, with your forehead on someone's chest. This was the thing worth fighting for. But I told you the bill was coming, and I don't want to mislead you, because life doesn't stop pressing just because you've had a breakthrough in your kitchen. 3 weeks after the letter, Soren worked a double shift that bled into a third. A multi-vehicle accident on Route 1. 4 critical patients. A night that pulled everything out of him and left him hollow. He came home at 7 in the morning to find Elara awake and pale-faced, Caleb in her arms, a look on her face that he had never seen before. "What happened?" he said immediately. Caleb had a fever in the night. It spiked to 104. I called the after-hours line, and they said to monitor it. But Soren, he was so still, he was so quiet. "He's better now," they said. "It's viral, it broke an hour ago. But last night I was alone, and I was so scared, and I kept thinking." She didn't finish the sentence. He crossed to her in 3 steps and took Caleb and held him, checking without thinking, color, breathing, responsiveness. Caleb grabbed his finger with a grip that was reassuringly strong and looked up at him with total indignation at being examined. "He's okay," Soren said. "He's okay, Elara. I know. But you weren't here." Her voice was very quiet. "I'm not blaming you. I know you were working. But last night at 3 in the morning, with a sick baby and Briar refusing to sleep and you unreachable because the department was overwhelmed, last night I understood something I've been trying not to understand." "Tell me," he said. "I can't do this alone. Not anymore. Not the way I used to." She looked at him steadily. "Which means I've let you in. Which means that when you're not here, when anything happens that means you might not be here, I feel it. I feel the gap where you're supposed to be." She swallowed. "And that terrifies me, because I worked so hard to be someone who didn't need anyone, and you walked back into my life, and now I need you, Soren. And I have no idea what to do with that." This was the confession she had been holding for months. This was the thing underneath the caution, and the slowly, and the ask me again in 6 months. Not distrust, not distance. Fear of how much she had already let him in. Soren sat down beside her on the couch, and for a long time said nothing. He understood that this was not a moment for reassurance. It was a moment for truth. "I need you too," he said finally. "I have since that cafe in Maine. I needed you when I left for Chicago, and I convinced myself I didn't because needing something I couldn't have felt impossible to carry. And then I came back and you were here, and you were more than I remembered, more honest, more complicated, more real. And I need you in a way that scares me too. Every time I go into a shift, I think about coming home. Not to the house. To you." She looked at him. "Needing someone isn't weakness," he said. "I spent years telling myself it was, that needing people was the thing that would undo everything I was trying to build. But you, this is the thing that makes the rest of it mean something. The career, the choices, all of it. It means something because you're here." Elara was quiet for a long time. "I'm tired of being scared of my own feelings," she said. "Me too," he said. "So what do we do with that?" He thought about it seriously before he answered. "We name it," he said. "When we're scared, we say so, before it calcifies into silence, before it becomes something we make decisions around instead of about." She leaned her head against his shoulder. Caleb, entirely recovered and deeply unimpressed with the emotional atmosphere, reached up and grabbed a fistful of Soren's shirt. "Okay," she said. "We name it. From now on." From now on. The months that followed were different. Not easier, but different in quality. There is a particular texture to a relationship that has survived its own worst moments, a density to it, an honesty that you can't manufacture and can't fake. Soren and Elara had it now, paid for in full. Briar and Caleb turned 1 year old on a Saturday in October, which happened to be the same month that Maine turned gold and copper, and the kind of beautiful that feels personal. Elara organized the party with the meticulous attention to detail that she brought to her design work. Warm lights strung across the backyard, wooden tables covered in linen, food that was actually good because Daniel Wynn did not believe in compromising on food. Soren stood at the edge of the backyard and watched her move through the party, laughing with the neighbor whose dog the boys were obsessed with, kneeling down to straighten Briar's collar, turning to find Soren across the yard with that look she had. "You're here. I'm glad. I still can't believe this is real." He crossed to her, without thinking. "Hi," he said. "Hi," she said. "You did this," he said, gesturing at the backyard, at the party, at the two impossibly small boys who were covered in icing and fully unbothered about it. "We did this," she said. He kissed her there in the backyard with their sons watching, and the neighbors pretending not to notice, and she laughed against his mouth, and it was the best sound he had ever heard in his life. That night, after the guests had gone and the boys were asleep, they sat on the porch in the dark with wine. Neither of them was really drinking, the night air carrying the first real bite of autumn. 1 year, she said. Of them or of us? Both. He thought about that, about what 1 year contained. The letter, Claudia on Congress Street, the night with Caleb's fever, the kitchen arguments and the midnight conversations and the hand held in the dark, and every small daily choosing of each other. "Can I tell you something?" he said. "Always. When I was in Chicago, before the delivery room, before any of this, I used to think about what I was building, the career, the credentials, the whole architecture of the life I thought I was supposed to have, and it felt important. It felt like the right version of success." He paused. "But there was always something hollow at the center of it, something missing that I couldn't name, and I told myself it was normal. That meaning was a luxury, that eventually I'd stop noticing the hollow part. And now," she said, "now I know what was missing." He looked at her. It was this, not the romantic version of it, not the proposal on the beach or the wedding or any of the cinematic stuff, just this. Sitting on a porch in Maine at the end of a day that was ordinary and imperfect and ours. Elara was quiet for a moment. "I used to think," she said slowly, "that love was about finding someone who made you feel safe, who took the fear away. I spent so long looking for the version of love that was quiet and certain and risk-free." She smiled slightly. "And then I got you, who is none of those things." "Thanks," he said dryly. "You're the kind of love that costs something," she said. "You're the kind of love where you can't protect yourself and love at the same time, where you have to be willing to be seen at your worst and your most scared and your most wrong." She looked at him steadily. "I used to think that was a flaw, that real love shouldn't feel risky. And now I think the risk is the point," she said. "Now I think love that doesn't cost you anything isn't love. It's just comfort. And comfort is fine. But it doesn't change you. It doesn't grow you." She paused. "You changed me, Soren. Even when it was hard. Because it was hard." He reached for her hand. They sat in the dark while the autumn settled around them, and the house held the sleeping sounds of their sons, and neither of them spoke for a long time because there was nothing left that needed to be said. And then, because life is not finished with you just because you've found your footing, the universe pressed one more time. Elara's design business had grown. What had started as freelance work out of a spare bedroom had become something real. 3 employees, a studio space downtown, a portfolio that had started attracting attention outside of Maine. She was, in the way that happens to people who are finally doing what they were always meant to do, becoming someone that the woman saving for design school in that cafe could not quite have imagined. It was at a client meeting in February that she met him. Daniel Wynn, her father. The father she had not seen since she was 6 years old, when he had walked out of a house in Portland and never come back. He had walked into the meeting as the representative for a development firm commissioning an interior redesign. He had sat down across the table from her, and for a full 10 seconds, neither of them had been able to speak. She came home that evening and stood in the doorway of the kitchen and looked at Soren and said, "Something happened today," in a voice he had never heard her use before. He turned off the stove. She told him everything. The meeting, the shock. The business card Daniel had left on the table after she'd ended the meeting early, with a note written on the back in handwriting she inexplicably recognized, "I know I have no right to ask, but I'd like to talk, if you'll let me." She held the card out to Soren, like it was something that might burn her. He took it, read it, set it down. "What do you want to do?" he asked. "I don't know," she said. "I spent 23 years being angry at someone I couldn't even remember clearly. And then he walked into a room and looked at me like I was a question he'd been trying to answer for just as long." "He doesn't deserve grace," Soren said carefully. "Not automatically. Not after what he did." "No," she agreed. "But maybe I need it anyway." "Not for him. For me." Soren nodded. "Then we figure it out together," he said. "Whatever you decide, wherever you land on this, I'm with you." She looked at him, and there it was again. In this kitchen, in this life that neither of them had planned, with 2 toddlers asleep upstairs and a business card on the counter, and a wound that had been decades in the making. That look. "You're here. I'm glad. I still can't believe this is real." "Okay," she said. "Okay? Okay," she said again, and stepped into him the way she always did when words ran out. This was not the end of the story. It was, in every possible way, another beginning. Because the family you build is not just the one you're born into, and not just the one you create. It's the one you keep choosing, in small ways, every single day. In the hard conversations, and the fear you name out loud, and the business cards you hold together, and the ordinary Tuesday evenings that are the whole of everything. Let me talk to you directly before we go, because Soren and Elara's story just gave us something I want to make sure you don't miss. The first lesson is that choosing someone once is not enough. Love is not a switch you flip. It's a practice. And the days when it's hardest to choose, when the letters on the counter and the fever spiked and the past walked into a client meeting, those are the days that define you. Not the beach proposal, not the ceremony. The ordinary, difficult, private moments when you could have chosen yourself instead, and you chose each other anyway. The second lesson is that needing someone is not weakness. Elara spent years building a version of herself that didn't need anyone, and love asked her to take that apart, not to become less, but to become real. Because a love that doesn't ask anything of you isn't love. It's a transaction. The third lesson is this: the wounds you carry don't disappear when you fall in love. They come with you. The father who left, the silence that became a habit, the decisions made alone. Love doesn't erase those things, but the right person helps you carry them differently. And the fourth, the one that is the beating heart of this whole story, the most courageous thing you will ever do in your life, is let yourself be fully known by another person. Not the curated version, Not the version that has it together. The real, frightened, complicated, trying their best version. Because that is the only person capable of being truly loved. And that is the only kind of love worth having. Soren and Elara didn't get a perfect life. They got a real one. And real, with all its cost and weight and grace, is so much better. This is where I need you. If this story moved you, if any part of Soren and Elara's journey hit something true inside you, please hit that like button. Share this with someone who needs to hear it. Someone rebuilding. Someone holding a card they don't know what to do with. Someone scared that needing someone makes them weak. And subscribe to Love Stories with Mr. Tyrell, because part 3 is coming. Daniel Wynn is going to sit across from his daughter and have to account for 23 years of silence. And Elara, this woman who rebuilt herself from nothing, who learned to choose love even when it cost her, is going to have to decide how much grace a broken person deserves. Trust me, you do not want to miss it. Comment below and tell me, which moment in part 2 hit hardest for you? The letter? The fever? The kitchen? I read every single one. Until next time, remember that the most beautiful chapters are the ones you never saw coming. This is Mr. Tyrell, and love, real love, is always worth the cost. Always.